So I know you've all been anxiously waiting to find out if I was going to plant a new lawn here out at Westberrie Acres at our new place, or what's going on with this whole situation. So unfortunately, things have been delayed slightly in terms of what my original plan was. I was hoping I was going to be able to plant something around the beginning of October and still at least have 4 weeks or so, maybe before the really cold weather came. But right now, that has not happened so far. We were waiting for our water lines to be finished. There was a part that needed to be ordered that took a little bit longer than we were thinking. So my plan, of course, is to plant ryegrass up here. I'm starting with about a 5,000 square foot area around the building, and also we're going to be doing some landscaping and stuff around the porch and all that stuff, which I'll be showing you next season. So I was planning to start with about 5,000 square feet of ryegrass up here, and so now it's getting to that point where I'm pretty late on doing that. But I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to still plant something this season unless we get to a really late time frame here and there's actually snow on the ground or something like that. But for now, I think as long as I'm still seeing some temperatures above freezing, which should happen here typically, we don't get extremely cold until about December time frame. I'm planning to at least plant something, whether that's annual ryegrass, whether that's perennial, and just see what happens with it. I think it'll be a good experiment regardless to see how late can you plant something, how do freezes and all that actually affect it, and what is it going to look like in the spring. Now, I need to do irrigation out on this section, and so whatever I plant here anyway is going to have some damage done to it in the future, but I would like to have some sort of ground cover up here for the winter time so I just don't have a big mud mess sitting out here. And so that's my plan right now. So like I said, even if I had 25% ground cover before I got to snowfall or something, that would be a win in my book, and just see what happens with the next season. But if you want to learn more about what we're doing here with the building, we have our framing done, we're waiting for HVAC, and drywall will be going in very soon. So we're still planning on moving around the Thanksgiving time frame. Hopefully everything's not going to be done in the building for quite some time. We have a lot of work to do this winter to finish some things. But if you want to follow along with that process, youtube.com/Ryan Knorr. That is my other channel where I'm doing all this sort of building stuff and just some of my other personal stuff that I like to make videos about. So check that out if you would. Let's get on to looking at the plots and seeing how things turned out this season. I thought it'd just be a good chance here towards the end of the season to give you a final update on how everything looks, what happened here on this 2022 season, and I got a lot of plots added to the mix here. So let's go take a look at everything and show you the progress. So behind me, of course, these are the main plots, and now that they're a year old, they are really starting to come into maturity. So just remember that when you plant a lawn, it's going to get better over the seasons as long as you keep caring for it the way that you should. And the more mature it gets, the better things should be long term. But I've been really happy with the way that these plots survived this season. A lot of drought out here and a lot of hot temperatures this season, over 90 for close to 40 days, I think it was, somewhere around there. So that is not a recipe for cool season grass to look absolutely fantastic, but I've been really happy with these and how they've turned out. And my application of fertilizer that I just put down a couple weeks ago has really kicked in on these now. This middle one is the fescue though, and I have not been watering that just because it's a real delicate type of thing, because sometimes it looks like it doesn't need water and then other times it quickly looks like it does need water. So I'm gonna get some water on this today, but if you notice that middle plot looks kind of dry, that would be exactly why it is dry. So this behind me is a large ryegrass plot. If you haven't seen my short from a few days ago, then I've been having a whole bunch of issues with raccoons digging in this thing, and they're still doing that. It's getting slightly better than it was, but I have them on camera caught in the act doing all that stuff. So I know that that's what's going on here. But you can see stripes still look really good over here. Next season, I'm not sure. I might do a light top dressing on this just because after that digging and just, you know, with all of our earthworm activity and things here, things start to get bumpy fairly quickly, so I want to smooth this out. So this plot and the ryegrass plot over in the main section are my favorite ones. Over here, the last time you saw this area was probably just bare soil. This is all annual ryegrass that I put in just as a temporary cover, just to make sure that things don't erode away too much, or that they're not so muddy during the winter time over here. So I'm standing right here in the warm season plots. I'll have planning to have a zoysia and a Bermuda in this section, and then over here in that larger area there, before you get to all those flags, that will be a larger plot of a monostand of bluegrass that I want to test for some drought tolerance and things like that. Now these are my non-irrigated long-term non-irrigated, I guess you should say, plots over here. So they have been watered just to get this to come in here and look good. But I've got, over in that far section, I've got ryegrass, I've got Kentucky bluegrass. Here I have fine fescue. I have my tall fescue. This is a mono stand of one of the varieties of tall fescue that is in my bag currently. And this is another mono stand. Now I didn't plant this one until just about a week or so ago, and it's kind of been sort of slow to grow in just because not as much sunlight. It's been off and on with the temperatures and things, but I should be able to still get this one going. It's very close now that I should be seeing some germination, and hopefully these freezes that are coming up aren't going to do some major damage to it. But I can just plant it again in the spring if I have to. But those two on the end are just some mono stands that I wanted to test of tall fescue. So behind me here is the larger section of my tall fescue mix, and this one, the difference between what I did with my normal 6 plots there versus this was I did not water it as much this season. I didn't let it go completely dormant, or when I saw it was starting to get super stressed, I did water it, but that was really probably maybe 3 times this season that it got some good watering during the summertime. And it looks really good now after that Maxer fertilizer app, so I'm happy with this. And I just wanted to kind of see the differences between the irrigated plots there and the one that was semi-irrigated. And then next season we'll be able to look at that non-irrigated stuff and see how it fares in the middle of summer. Now behind me here we have what has quickly become some of my other favorite plots, and I'm not really surprised by that because I already personally knew what this stuff was going to pretty much look like because I've been reel mowing for a while. But for those of you who wanted to see the exact same mixes that I sell in reel mowed sections instead of taller, then this is exactly what that is for. And just look at this ryegrass right here. It's about 7 weeks old. Looks just like a tee box. So really love that, but not surprised that this Kentucky bluegrass has been lagging along everything else. But honestly, this looks a lot better than that Kentucky bluegrass right back there did on its first fall. By the time I got to about May on those Kentucky bluegrass plots, they were looking good, but this one I've actually been able to mow a couple times already, so I'm ahead of the game on that. This tall fescue plot here mowed at 3/4 of an inch has really impressed me. Honestly, if I were going to go with fescue and I wanted to see, can I reel mow it? Yes, I did this all season back in my other house too at 3/4 of an inch, and it was totally fine. But so far, I love the look of this. I really enjoy how that's looking. So then this is a straight fine fescue right here, and it's still filling in too. It's slower like bluegrass, but it is starting to fill in and look better. So overall, like I said, these reel mowed plots are some of my favorite just because you just don't get another look like that with the rotary mower. It's totally fine. The rotary mower has advantages too, but just using a manual reel on here, there's really no stripes. It's just a straight, flat, even cut. Looks beautiful. Over here, this is an interesting thing to look at. You have Elite fescue over here, Kentucky 31 fescue, and then over on this section, this is my Elite shade mix in full sun. So I haven't really been taking care of this fescue too much this season the way that I should be. I will be next year. But you can just tell the genetic color differences there between those two. And then over here, you can definitely tell a big difference in terms of the ryegrass that's in that shade mix. It really loves the sun, and you can tell that that's doing just fine out in the full sun. The fescue is mixed into there, that fine fescue, and it's doing great right now, but we'll see next summer how everything looks out here in full sun. This was some annual rye that I planted along with everything else, and it got some fungus on it. So this one actually is not looking too great, but this is just a ground cover before I plant buffalo grass next season in this spot. Of course, right here we have the micro clover. Looks like the frost did a little bit of a number on this one, so we'll see how it fares here in the next few weeks. This one right here is the tall fescue with the micro clover mixed in, and so far doing just fine, but looks pretty much just like an even amount of clover in there on a tall fescue lawn. Also wanted to show you, this was where that blanket ended and where I did the Slope Master product. So definitely not as full right in that section. This was all blanket, straw blanket. So comparing those two, you can kind of see that line right there. This is a mono stand of Bewitched Kentucky bluegrass, and it's been slow, but you know, very typical of bluegrass. It's just finally starting to get going now, and I'm not sure if I'll be able to mow this before the end of the season or not, but I have a really good start on it, so I'm sure that next season it will be ready to go for mowing. Can't forget about all the shade testing areas down here too, so let's take a look at this stuff. So first of all, this is a good example right here of what happens when you do a bare ground seeding. You don't cover it with anything and you don't have irrigation and it's in full sun. So all of those scenarios right here have led to a very thin and not so great looking seeding project right here. But I wanted to test that just with rainfall, nothing else, to kind of give you some example of that. Now I can come in here next season in the spring, rough this up a little bit, put some new seed in, probably cover it at that point, and we'll be good to go eventually. But that's kind of what you can expect there when you have less than ideal conditions. This out here, most of it has recovered from summertime and all the heat that we had. Again, none of this is irrigated, so it's just rainfall, but we continue to be in a severe drought here. Couple spots here that died off during the summertime, but overall not terrible for the kind of summer that we had. Down here in the main shade testing spot, things are extremely dry. I did come down here and mow today, but most of the grass is just laying over, and fine fescue especially doesn't have a whole lot of structure to it anyway. Hopefully we're going to have at least one rainfall before we get too cold, but we're going to see what's going to happen. I also noticed in some of the shadiest sections here, I would consider this no more than just this filtered light that hits it. You will see it looks like most of the ryegrass that's in this mix didn't really make it through that. I don't see any real bluegrass in there either, so this is the fine fescue that's left. A light overseed, I think, of the fine fescue would be good to just thicken this up, but you'll see in some of these extremely dense areas, and also just the fact that it's so dry down here. Fine fescue survived that, but it doesn't look like much else. Right over here, this stuff that I seeded, actually not too bad. Definitely could use some water. It is in dire need of some water, to be honest with you, but I've only done one mow on this, but it's just not growing much considering there's no rain. This is the other testing that I'm doing on dense shade, which right now you'll see there is some sun on here, but this is all going to depend. Most of the time during midsummer, this is going to be in a really shady spot. So this is going to be my testing. This is ryegrass right here and bluegrass right there. The rest of this out here is more of the tall fescue that I seeded, and hopefully some rain soon for this area too. I'm planning to do one more app of fertilizer on these yet before the end of the season. Usually we get close to the end of the season here around Halloween, just depending on what weather's looking like and all that. So if you have some questions on the end of the season, things that you want to know, what you should be looking for, or what you should do on the end of the season type of stuff, leave me a comment down below and I'll try to answer that in an upcoming video. Thank you so much for watching today and looking at all these updates. We'll see you next time.